$25,000. That's supposedly what it cost to have Curtis Jackson killed. And for over 2 decades, everyone thought they knew who pulled the trigger. But now, testimony from federal court is painting a completely different picture. And some of those claims, they loop back to one of the biggest names in hip-hop. Let me break this down for you. May 24th, 2000, South Jamaica, Queens. A 24-year-old 50 Cent is sitting in a friend's car outside his grandmother's house on 161st Street. His son is inside. His grandmother is in the yard. He just grabbed some jewelry and was about to leave. Then a man walked up to the car and opened fire. 9 shots from a 9mm handgun at close range. The bullets hit his hand, arm, hip, both legs, chest, and left cheek. One round went straight through his face, shattered his wisdom tooth, and swelled his tongue so bad he could barely speak. His friend in the car caught a bullet in the hand too. 50 spent 13 days in the hospital, used a walker for 6 weeks, and didn't fully recover for 5 months. That bullet through his cheek, it left him with a slight slur that would later become part of his signature sound. In interviews, 50 has been pretty clear about what happened. He said the shooter was paid to do it. When asked why someone would pay to have him killed, he explained it was because someone felt like he might do something to them if they kept going in the direction they were going. And honestly, when you look at the timeline, it all traces back to one song. Before the shooting, 50 had recorded a track called Ghetto Quran. The song explicitly named drug dealers and kingpins from Queens, including Kenneth Supreme McGriff, his nephew Gerald Prince Miller, Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols, and Howard Pappy Mason. He was detailing their drug operations from the 1980s. And in the streets, that's a violation. You don't put names on records. You don't document criminal enterprises in songs. McGriff had led the Supreme Team gang during the crack epidemic. At their peak in 1987, they were reportedly pulling in over $200,000 a day in drug money. He was paroled in 1995 after a narcotics conspiracy conviction. And according to federal documents that came out later, McGriff allegedly put out a $25,000 hit on 50 Cent as revenge for that song. Now here's where it gets interesting. The beef between 50 and Murder Inc. didn't come out of nowhere. Before the shooting, 50 had released How to Rob, a track where he jokingly threatened to rob various rappers, including Ja Rule. The song was a huge radio hit in 1999 and was supposed to appear on Power of the Dollar, his debut album for Columbia that never saw official release. He'd made a habit of disrespecting Ja Rule on mixtapes, and according to court testimony, McGriff had met with 50 multiple times, telling him to stop targeting Ja and Murder Inc. 50 didn't stop. For years, the name attached to that hit was Daryl Homo Baum. The nickname was short for homicide, supposedly earned as a teenager for knocking out and robbing people. He was from Brooklyn's Lafayette Gardens projects, stood about 5 feet 7 inches with a limp from an old injury, and was known for violence despite his size. Baum had met Mike Tyson in juvenile detention, and after serving a decade in prison, he got released in 1999. Tyson supported him with a car, cash, and a Rolex, even employing him as his bodyguard. But Baum gravitated back towards street life. He connected with McGriff's network, and multiple sources claim McGriff hired Baum for the 50 Cent hit. 50 even named him directly in his music. On Many Men Wish Death, from his 2003 album Get Rich or Die Trying, he rapped about Homo shooting him and how 3 weeks later Homo got shot down. That line was factual. On June 10th, 2000, just 3 weeks after the shooting, Baum was killed, shot in the back of the head at Quincy Street and Marcy Avenue in Brooklyn during a gang turf war. Mike Tyson was reportedly devastated. He dedicated his June 24th, 2000 boxing win over Lou Savarese to Baum and allegedly offered $50,000 for retaliation against rival gang members. So case closed, right? Baum did it. Baum got killed. End of story. Except understanding the hit means understanding who Kenneth Supreme McGriff really was. The Supreme Team wasn't just a drug gang. It was a criminal enterprise that dominated Queens' drug trade throughout the 1980s crack epidemic. McGriff ran the operation with military precision. His nephew Gerald Prince Miller handled much of the street-level distribution. Together, they built a cocaine and crack network that was reportedly generating over $200,000 daily at its peak. Their influence on hip-hop culture was direct. The money, the cars, the jewelry, the lifestyle that would later define rap videos, a lot of it was modeled on what drug kingpins like McGriff represented in the projects. Young artists growing up in Queens watched these men and either admired them, feared them, or both. 50 Cent was one of those young men. Growing up in South Jamaica, he had idolized McGriff and the Supreme Team. In a 2006 article, 50 spoke openly about this dynamic. He admitted that as a young drug dealer himself, these were the men he looked up to, which makes the Ghetto Quran situation even more complicated. He wasn't just exposing random criminals. He was putting the business of men he'd once admired on wax. But here's the part nobody talks about. During the Murder Inc. money laundering trial in 2005, a government witness named John Rogan took the stand, and what he said contradicted everything the public thought they knew. According to Rogan, he met with a three-man team in a Brooklyn garage right after the shooting. That team allegedly included McGriff, a man named Robert's son, Lyons, and another associate. Reagan testified that McGriff told him, "I got him," referring to 50 Cent. He said McGriff thought 50 was dead because of how much blood there was and how many times he'd been shot at close range. And here's the detail that stuck with people. Reagan claimed that years later, the attempted murder became a running joke around Murder Inc. offices. He testified they'd laugh about the way 50 was squirming in his car, how he kept putting up his hands trying to stop the bullets. The timing here matters. The shooting happened just 2 months after 50 was stabbed at New York's Hit Factory recording studio. According to prosecutors, text messages exchanged between Irv Gotti and McGriff suggested that stabbing was also connected to Murder Inc. So within a span of weeks, 50 had been attacked twice, and both incidents allegedly tied back to the same circle of people. Now, the defense pushed back hard on this. 50 Cent himself has maintained in interviews that Baum was the shooter. Some prosecutors even suggested it might be safer for 50 to pin the crime on a dead man. The case officially remains unsolved because 50 refused to cooperate with authorities, adhering to the street code. He identified Baum but wouldn't pursue prosecution since Baum was already dead. But here's where Jay-Z enters the picture. Kenneth Supreme McGriff wasn't just some random drug dealer. He was deeply connected to the music industry, specifically to Murder Inc. records. The feds believed Murder Inc. was being used to launder McGriff's drug money, and during McGriff's trial, he actually submitted a list of witnesses he wanted to call to testify on his behalf. That list included Irv Gotti, Ja Rule, 50 Cent, and Jay-Z. See, Jay-Z and McGriff were photographed together in 2002. According to transcripts from recorded phone calls between McGriff and Chris Gotti that came out in 2005, McGriff was planning to ask Jay-Z for money to fund his defense. Chris told McGriff that Jay had asked about him and his case the last time they were together. There's even a story about how McGriff's enthusiasm for an early Jay-Z track helped get "Ain't No Nigga" on the radio back in the day. During the Murder Inc. trial, text messages were read in court where Irv Gotti told McGriff to come to a party because Jay and Russell Simmons will be there. When that came up, the defense attorney said they were obviously talking about Jay-Z and Russell Simmons. The judge apparently asked, "Who is Jay-Z and Russell Simmons?" which got laughs in the courtroom. In November 2005, Jay-Z was actually present in court, sitting front row in support of Irv and Chris as the jury exonerated them on the money laundering charges. So to be clear, nobody's saying Jay-Z ordered a hit on 50 Cent. What the court testimony revealed was a web of connections between the music industry and the streets that went deeper than most people realized. McGriff was allegedly orchestrating violence while simultaneously rubbing shoulders with the biggest names in hip-hop. And when his world started collapsing in court, he tried to call on those same names to help him. The shooting had major consequences for 50's career too. Columbia Records dropped him and shelved his debut album, Power of the Dollar. He was blacklisted from the industry, but surviving 9 shots at close range became central to his legend. When he finally broke through in 2003 with Eminem and Dr. Dre, that story was part of what made him. And when interviewers asked about the pain of getting shot in the face, 50 gave an answer that showed exactly how hardened he'd become. He said it wasn't as painful as having to visit the dentist repeatedly for root canal. McGriff was convicted in February 2007 on murder, conspiracy, and drug trafficking charges. He's currently serving life in federal prison. The identities of everyone involved in that May 2000 shooting may never be definitively established in court. But what the testimony revealed was that the attempted murder of 50 Cent wasn't just street beef. It was connected to money, power, record labels, and people whose names still dominate hip-hop today. The truth about what happened that day in Queens might still be coming out, piece by piece, in courtrooms we're not even paying attention to. What makes this story so compelling is how many versions exist. You've got 50 Cent pointing at Baum, who's dead. You've got government witnesses pointing at Robert's son, Lyons, who, according to recent interviews, is reportedly still alive and was later working as Ja Rule's bodyguard. You've got McGriff allegedly boasting about the hit immediately afterward, and you've got a whole network of text messages, witness testimony, and circumstantial evidence tying it all to a record label that was supposedly in the business of making music. Detective Bill Courtney, who investigated the Supreme Team and these connected cases, has spoken publicly about how Lyons was a low-profile individual without a significant criminal record, which made him a mystery to law enforcement. He'd apparently staked out 50's grandmother's house before opening fire. The connections ran deep, but proving them in court was another matter entirely. Meanwhile, 50 turned the near-death experience into fuel. He built an entire image around surviving what should have killed him. And the people allegedly responsible? Some are dead, some are in prison for life, and some are still out there. Their names only whispered in court transcripts that most people will never read. So here's my question. Knowing what we know now about the connections between McGriff, Murder Inc., and the rest of the industry, do you think the full story has ever really been told? Drop your thoughts below.